Hi, welcome to Movie Chat. This is your co-host, Angelina.
And Tommy.
And this week's movie choice was...
A Quiet Place 2.
Which ironically wasn't quiet at all.
Where the original film leaned heavily on the premise of the aliens needing to hear the characters in order to attack them, they like to use the psychological thrill of the movie being a very, very quiet film in order to build anticipation to the events. The second film did not follow, though. Whereas the first film really used the idea of the aliens needing to hear and the movie being quiet because of that, the second film relied on cheesy jump scares that I did not enjoy as much as the first.
Well, it was funny because before we saw this movie, I said to you, are they going to have jump scares in this movie? And we thought they were going to follow the plot structure of the first one and rely on psychological tactics and using, like they did in this one, music as a character. This movie, however, I found the sounds and the pitches so obnoxious that I spent half the movie with my hands over my ears.
I didn't mind. The music was really... It kept me entertained and it kept me a part of the film where you can tell that when the music builds, the anticipation is building. But the plot of the first one and some of the second one is that the character who is the daughter of John Krasinski is deaf, and her hearing aid can ring really loud and cause the aliens to freak out. They don't really explain what it does to them. But the problem is, when you're filming a movie about a deaf character, you probably should make it accessible to people who are disabled. With the ringing of the hearing aid, it was totally unbearable for anyone who has any auditory disorders. So I don't understand the concept of making a film about a deaf girl and then making it impossible for someone with, say, autism to sit through the entire movie. It just didn't make sense to me.
It hurt my ears. And for the parts that I wasn't holding my ears, I had my hands cupped in my face because I was kind of like, I'm not used to watching stuff with jump scares. I counted 7. There might have been 8 or 9 because I just wasn't expecting it. It was very different from the first one. I almost felt like we just made money on the first one. Let's go ahead and crank out a sequel. Because there were definitely issues with the plot structure in this one.
And then one of the many tropes that horror movies fall through is that the main black character ends up dying.
Oh my gosh.
And of course, out of the entire series, there are 2 black characters.
And when he was on screen, you and I looked at each other and I said, please don't tell me this character is going to die because we should be better than this in 2021.
And for no reason.
Reason.
His death didn't make sense even within the film. He started to freak out and worry about his family when they very clearly showed his family being secure. It didn't make sense. And, you know, one of the things you want to do when you're developing character is have a character triumph, or a character that wasn't maybe such a good person. You want to show them evolving. And one of those characters, they had a missed opportunity for that person to sacrifice themselves, and that didn't pan out. It's very strange. The character development just wasn't there for this. Yeah, it ultimately was a letdown in comparison to the high bar that the original movie had. Where I said the original movie, I probably had a 4 to a 4.5 star. This movie fell maybe a 3.5, maybe even a 3. I was very disappointed at the end of it, but it's still a good thriller.
I still recommend it, even though you and I talked for quite a while about the problems with the structure of the plot and the character development. You and I both said we would definitely recommend this anyway, just because it had a lot going on. I think that actually was a deterrent, because at one point you and I said, why are there 3 stories running concurrently right now? It was almost like a television series more than a movie, because you and I are like, it went from kind of, there wasn't a lot going on to, whoa, there's too much happening right now.
Yeah. I like I said probably many times at this point, the original movie kept to the theme of it being a quiet place. The movie really, besides the music and besides some of the objects being moved around, it really relied on the characters building up the anticipation for the stuff to happen. This movie, it was disappointing. it's a good movie to see if you have an hour and a half. It was very short.
Was short.
But it's not A Quiet Place 2. It was more of a letdown.
And I will say this, if you're looking to get back in the theater, which we were, because you and I are big movie people, so this was a fun movie to get back into the theater, and it did give us a lot to talk about. I still recommend seeing it. I'm glad we went to the matinee, though.
Absolutely. If you're looking to spend an hour and a half doing something that you'll probably enjoy, this is a fine thing to do. I know John Krasinski can do better as a producer. He did so well with the first one, or as a director.
Well, he wrote this and directed it. But you know what, this is what annoys me about Hollywood, and you and I talked about this. There wasn't a screening for people. Why wouldn't people say to him, hey, you should think about this, you should think about that? Why are you killing that person off? Why are you saying this is a quiet thing, there's someone hearing impaired, and then you're making it really unpleasant in the auditory department? So I wish people would just tell him, hey, this is some of the stuff you need to fix. Because if you and I are sitting in that screening, we've got a scroll of things that you should take into consideration.
Yeah. I guess one thing that someone might accuse us both of is not being a fan of the horror genre or the psychological thriller genre. And I guess that's somewhat true.
We did like the first one, though.
I did enjoy the original movie.
As did I.
And I do enjoy some, but I'm not a fan of the genre. So someone who's more of a horror snob or a psychological thriller snob might say that they really loved it and it was absolutely fantastic, and I just didn't get it because I'm not a fan of the genre. But I do find myself enjoying some of the better quality movies. Anything like we said, A Quiet Place 1 was fantastic.
Right.
Anything done by Jordan Peele is very good.
Yes.
Why was this not done to the same quality as the other two?
I don't know. And the whole appearance, the reemergence of John Krasinski's character at the beginning of this, just for me was like, no. I'm at that point, wishing it was Jim from The Office because he died in the first movie. Why did they feel the need to go back to the very beginning of the last movie just so he could, they wrote new scenes and just so he could be in this movie? Like, to me, your wife's in it, you wrote it, you directed it, you don't need to be in this movie. I don't know. Even though I love him, I just felt like that was unnecessary.
It also felt unnecessary. The entire scene where they go back to the beginning of it all, the first day that the aliens came. If you're trying to establish world, or if you're trying to build the world or establish lore, that makes sense. You need to build the story so people understand what's going on. But they didn't do that. They really just showed more scenes of the aliens needing to hear in order to kill people.
So my thought is, as a writer, what we do in series, when we're writing series, is we do what's called an information dump. So that's for people who haven't read the other books, and in this case, maybe for people who hadn't seen that first movie.
But even if you're going to do an information dump to update people who haven't seen it, why not establish new lore? Why not establish a new thing so the people who enjoyed the first can understand it? They really didn't say anything besides the fact that the creatures that were never named really came from space. They didn't come from Earth, which I don't think anyone thought. It felt really just like a gratuitous chase scene.
Well, and then they didn't explain, a couple things at the beginning where you and I figured it out, and I said, oh, I guess that explains it. I mean, that's some of the stuff was frustrating because they didn't explain to the audience some of the things that were going on, and you had to figure it out.
Yeah, Like I said a million times, this movie was not as good as the first. It definitely felt like it was lacking in many departments. Maybe because of COVID, they were rushed or they didn't have the proper materials to film this. I don't think that's the case, but maybe COVID had an impact. I would like to think that's the problem, and it wasn't just a one-shot wonder with the original movie.
Right, and I kind of expect more out of him. I'll see anything with him in it. So he, that, I don't know. I found it disappointing, although not too disappointing to recommend because I did have fun going there. And even though I'm not big on the horror genre, it was kind of fun to have those, like I could feel my heart beating. And that was the other thing I don't like. They did use that track, the heart beating track, a few times for a few scenes. And I don't like that. Like I get the willies when I hear that in a movie.
I don't think I noticed it. I
absolutely did.
Was
it me? Was it my heart?
I only really notice it when the music really swells or when it's like starting to build. Because to go back to the original movie, they didn't have any of the original, like, you wouldn't have something where the movie is like really needing to build with the music.
Right.
You could feel it build even without. Whereas it felt like this movie really did need it.
Well, now I'm going to say something nice. I like the fact that the protagonist and the hero of this story was audibly impaired. So at least, so that kind of made it interesting because she couldn't hear what was going on. And so it was interesting that heightened for me. That heightened like the exhilaration.
One of the best scenes in the entire movie is from the original day one scene. But it's not because they're trying to establish information. They're showing that she, like, originally was having problems understanding what was going on. But I just... Being able to see the events unfold, like a total chaos situation from the eyes of someone who's deaf, it was very interesting. But they didn't expound on it. They didn't have any other scene in the movie like that. If you're gonna... I guess near the end they had something similar... But they didn't have a sequence of events where everything was unfolding, and it was an interesting idea that they never expounded upon.
Well, the problem was there was a lack of storytelling with the other characters of the family because they were trying to like make things exciting, and then it was a letdown because, like you and I talked about, they didn't even really need those parts in there. Like I don't know why they chose to do that with the story. So like it would have been a better story for the mom to go with the daughter and leave the other two behind. You know, it would have been more interesting to have her take on that role because she was a strong feminine protagonist in the first character. Like you had her and then the daughter's taking over in this one. So it just felt like disjointed and I don't know. Again, I still recommend it. It was good being back in the theater. Do you have any final last words?
I would stick to a hard 3, maybe 3.5 stars. I would recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it to a snob.
Yes. Not for the avid horror fans.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning in. This is Angelina.
And Tommy.
Until next time.